Hi, everyone. This is Ken Rakowski. Welcome to Metal Connect, where we get to hang out with one of the great speakers from Saturday. We hold them over so we could dive deep into what they're doing. I am honored to have somebody that literally when he started this whole process of Charity Water, Scott Harrison is truly an inspiration. And what I love about Scott is he's completely 100% transparent, honest about himself and about where he came from and his roots. So Scott, before we go anywhere, I was just talking to, I forget who I was talking to, a fellow New Yorker friend of yours going, you can't believe that you left New York. He's shocked that you left New York.
I know, I've heard that. People are like, no one's more New York than Scott Harrison, 26 years. Like, you came here at 18, you know, you talked down to everybody that like Brooklyn was not New York, right? And I'm out.
Are you happy?
I'm in the attic right now I mean, do we want to start here? Because it's kind of crazy.
No, I want to hear it.
We were living. So little context. I lead an organization. I've been working at this thing called Charity Water for 14 years, which I'm sure we'll talk about. Pre-COVID, I was living with my wife and two kids, 4 and 6, in a 2-bedroom apartment, paying almost $100,000 in rent in Battery Park City for 3 rooms: the kids' bedroom, the living room, and which the tiny kitchen was attached to, and then the our bedroom. And the rents were high, great school districts, so everybody sent their kids to public school, so you're saving on that private school. And when COVID hit, I make a living running a nonprofit, but I actually make about 1/3 of my income speaking around the world corporately. Well, all that went away. So like, boom. And I looked at my wife and I said, we can't pay our rent. Like, it's that simple. We just can't pay our rent.
Really?
Without that 1/3 of income. And I think so many New Yorkers are that close to the line. You go to Whole Foods and it's $250. You put your kid in 1 week of soccer camp, it's $1,000. You park your Kia Sorento in the garage, it's $600, right? And all of these things add up. And you're like, I literally cannot afford to live in the city with a wife and kids in a 2-bedroom apartment that I could never afford to buy. Like, the 2-bedroom would cost $2.5 million. Like, who has $500,000 for a down payment? Not a guy working in a nonprofit. So it was this kind of almost freeing moment. Okay, where else are we going to go? And long story short, we bought a 240-acre farm, 2 hours and 15 minutes outside, a 7-bedroom farmhouse that was built in 1930. And let me just say, my mortgage is about 1/3 of my rent.
God, and you own it. You own it.
Well, I mean, the bank technically owns it.
Yeah, I understand.
Eventually.
Wow.
So I'm in the attic now. My wife's downstairs. The kids are out there. This is the quietest place I can be. And I'm actually fixing up this attic as a playroom for the kids. And we just had an electrician come and electrify it. So we've been loving it. We have 2 family of bear that live on the property. We have 22 chickens, or we did have 22 chickens until last weekend on my 11th wedding anniversary. My wife hands me a mimosa because we both forgot it was our wedding anniversary, and then a butcher knife. And it was my job to go take care of 5 roosters that had been just attacking the hens. So, if you'd told me, I don't know, in February when I was on a book tour in Seoul, Korea, doing 11 speaking engagements in 2 days, that I would be, severing the heads of chickens and then eating them in soup on a farmhouse in Pennsylvania, I would have told you were crazy.
But this transition, is it freaking awesome?
It's awesome. I mean, my kids are, my kids are shooting BB guns. We have a 7-acre lake on the property. So they're canoeing. We see bear, bobcat, skunks. I've seen, Ken, the most interesting thing I think about all this, just personally, is I've seen the changing of seasons up close. I knew more about the renovation of Delta lounges around the world. I did 85 flights last year. The year before, I did 96 flights. I was back and forth to JFK every 3.5 days. So I could tell you, like, in Amsterdam, like Delta just did a new like outdoor terrace. I knew nothing about spring or trees or animal. I mean, really, I'm like I was a city dweller. So it's been so interesting when we came to the place, there was snow, there was hail. It was the middle of March. There wasn't a single leaf on any of the trees, that we could really see across 240 acres. And then one by one, different species would hit this week. And then 2 weeks later, another one would hit. And then the whole place is green. And then, the cherry tree hits for 3 weeks and it's bright red and all those leaves fall. I mean, it's just so cool. So we're loving it. And I'm on Zoom like everybody else. Like I might as well be in the country paying a third of the money for a 2-bedroom and not taking the elevator up and down every day.
There's a metal guy I got to hook you up with. His name is Eric Oberholzer. He lives pretty close to you. He created Tender Greens. Have you ever been to Tender Greens?
Yeah.
He's got them all over the place. And he did the same thing. He left the city and now he's living large in the country. So in my business, my generosity has typically been, we've raised $500 million now for clean water projects. And, I'm a fundraiser. Like I ask people for money and, you get good at it after 14 years of just going for it. Like I asked somebody for $12 million last December and they said, sure. I asked somebody else for $5 million in the same week. They said, sure. I've never really been able to give. So now, on tomorrow morning, we're dropping off food at the local food pantry. My wife and I put our son in first grade and we attended the first PTA meeting and we're like, what's the budget of the PTA? And they said $10,000. That's the whole budget of the PTA, the annual budget of the PTA. And we're like, we could probably help. I'm like, how do you raise that money? And they said, we do a candy sale drive over a period of months, and we hope to raise $7,000. And we're like, we can anonymously match the candy drive, right? Like, because we have a little bit of margin. Like we can actually write a $7,000 check to the PTA. So that's been nice too, where we feel like we actually now can be donors in a local community, volunteer at the food bank, help out, just help, be more helpful, maybe. Scott, how do you go from this idea of being a 501(c), a nonprofit? How do you learn to ask for things for you? Meaning, us entrepreneurs, we're always trying to build a business. We're trying to raise funds for a for-profit, and we can sell the percentage of the company. We can sell this tangible asset. How do you go from selling a dream? Will you ever go into a for-profit space?
I mean, I've turned down C-level jobs at, unicorns, $300 million plus companies, $500 million plus companies. I'm just not motivated by money. I was actually listening to Guy Raz's How I Built This he interviewed Sal Khan from Khan Academy. And he said this one line, which I love. He said something to the effect of, I front loaded my philanthropy. Like I did it first, like I did it through my life. I did it through my service. I didn't get rich. I didn't get to the end of the line and then say, okay, now I have $100 million to give away, which is actually, rarer than you think, because you're always keeping score. And like, if you have 100 million, you need 250. If you have 250, you need 500. If you're at 500, I mean, somebody's got $1 billion and like, right. So he just said, I front loaded, like I reversed the whole thing. So I've always looked at it that way, that if I can keep open hands, if I don't try and take too much for myself or my family, that one day, literally billions and billions of dollars can flow through my hands to the greatest needs in the world, and that I will have given away way more than Jack Dorsey.
I get it.
I will have given away way more than, so I'm not asking for myself is the answer to your question. And because of our model, 100% of the money goes directly to the projects across 28 countries. Charity Water for 14 years has had this model where I raise the overhead for the organization, the salaries, the office costs for about 130 families, and then 1 million donors give in the purest way. So if you wrote a check now for $100 or $1 million, that would go straight. I wouldn't touch it. None of our staff would touch it. It would go straight to the field to help people in need. So, I think that shift happened for me somewhere around year 5 or year 7. That I'm not asking for myself. If you give me $50 million, I'm still sitting in this attic. I
I
don't go
get
buy
it.
a watch. Like I don't have a nicer car or truck, or like my salary doesn't go up. That's just $50 million that I can use to help, over 1 million new people get clean water.
Well, I know that over the last couple of years, I've given a lot because I've donated my birthdays. And I have a lot of
Yes.
friends. And friends
You've
want to
done
make sure that
great. Yes.
they're giving a lot. And I like that. But look at the legacy besides what you're educating your kids on this idea of giving and receiving. Do you ever want to leave a financial legacy to your kids to where they have that ability or a freedom that you didn't have when you were younger? Because you worked your tail off when you were young as a club promoter.
Yeah. Yeah, but I didn't have any, I don't know, I was like middle class, and my dad, helped me with the first month's rent and at NYU, $600 or something. And, you'd make me $1,000 loans that I would pay back. And it worked. I don't know. I mean, Ken, I get to see really, really, really wealthy people, and
Mhm.
I see more dysfunction than not
Mm.
around that. So there is no sense, if college exists in that form, it'd be great to give my kids, a college education without debt,
Yeah,
without coming out being saddled with debt. But that's about it.
I get it.
Maybe 10 grand to start their first business, um,
I
10,
love it.
15 grand, to fund the charity they start, or the local business they start. But no, there's not, we have enough. We have enough.
Okay, I want to, before we dive into stuff, I want to just have some questions. First, I want to introduce you to Jabu. Jabu is a world-class artist from South Africa. He was thrown in jail for making apartheid and free Nelson Mandela t-shirts. And he has literally become one of the world's top artists. And he's a class act. Jabu, you have a question for Scott?
Yes, Scott, we all know that the world is surrounded by water, and it looks to me like this should be a simple solution. After all these years of technology and science, especially in this group, and it looks like to me, based on what you're saying, it's easy these days to raise money. How can we make desalinization cheaper so that I feel like this could be a permanent solution for the rest of the world that doesn't have clean water?
Thanks for that question. And obviously you're on the right side of history. So awesome to hear about your impact and work in South Africa. Desal specifically is still more expensive by an order of magnitude than the communities we serve living on $1 or $2 a day could afford. So desalinization requires a huge capital cost of investment to actually build out a facility, up to hundreds of millions of dollars, depending on how big it is. And then it requires a huge amount of energy to run it. There's also huge environmental impacts and controversy around the waste, the brine that gets dumped in concentrate in the ocean. So I think it's either one for two. You got to push 2 gallons of water to get 1 out, or 3 gallons of water to get 1 out. And then you have this refuse, this waste. So it is not, it's not quite that obvious. It's highly contested by environmentalists, and it's very expensive. Now, it's been coming down over time. So the cost of desal has dramatically come down. So sort of Moore's law in effect there. The reality is most of the countries Charity Water works in, actually 28 countries that we work in, most of the countries are landlocked. Mm-hmm. So there's no ocean to stick a straw in and then run the pipes. Right. I mean, we work in Ethiopia specifically. So that's a country I've been to 31 different times. And it's a landlocked country. There's 100 million people living in Ethiopia, and 50 million are living without access to clean water. So about 7% of the world's population without clean water live in a landlocked country. Let me just...
May I say something? If you look at petroleum, the use of oil, I mean, that has not been a problem for people to get oil in all those countries. They've been able to build pipes or have trucks to deliver oil in every country imaginable. Why is it that that can't be done? I think maybe the money is not being spent to do more research on how we can make this cheaper, faster, and better, and actually be able to transport water or build pipes that can supply water or even sell water.
Okay, let's try that. Scott?
Yeah. Well, let me just end there. There's a great special edition by The Economist that they did, kind of looking at the state of water. Ken, you can connect us, and I'd love to send that to you. And they did a piece on desalinization, kind of the future of it, the costs, you know, how that's changed over time. Let me just give you a quick, like, high level. So as we sit here, 10 o'clock East Coast time, 7, you know, LA time, 785 million people live globally without access to water. So it's 10% of the world. So we're all drinking clean water or beers or wine or whatever. 10% of people in the world are drinking disgusting contaminated water. 82% of those people live in rural areas. 18% live in urban and peri-urban. So cities and towns, 18%. Remote farming, you know, rural areas, 82%. So that's the big challenge, right? You can't really move water. It's 250 people here, 185 people here, 300 people up that mountain. It's not 17 million people in a city. It's not Addis Ababa that's the problem. It's the 50 million people scattered across the Ethiopian, you know, countryside, where so what we've really done, so we're solution agnostic. Let me just say, like, if desal is the thing and it's cost effective, we would do it. And in the first coastal country where that was the appropriate solution. So we drill wells, we dig wells, we build rainwater harvesting systems in Rajasthan, India, in the Thar Desert. We have the largest biosand filter program in the world in Cambodia. Think of that as a giant Brita filter for $65 using locally made materials for a whole family. We do $1.8 million gravity-fed systems in Rwanda that connect villages and use fuel and electricity to, you know, pipe water and move it all over. So we have no, like, dog in the fight when it comes to what is the appropriate technology. Across the whole Charity Water portfolio, and we'll raise, you know, we raised $90 million last year. $40 gives one person clean water. In some countries it's 30, in some countries it's 50, but for $40 on average, we can get a person access to clean water. So these are really low cost solutions typically. A desal cost might be 400, just to give you an example.
But that is going to change, Scott. That is going to change once we have real fusion. That will allow us to totally change it. And it sounds like we're getting closer to having that.
And we can drop that in, and we can pilot it. So we're you know, so Jabu, anything that you see if you see anything in Africa that is happening with desal for the rural poor, please let us know. We want to know about it. You know, for those populations, for kind of the rural, and by the way, Charity Water has just made a decision to only work rurally, because we're seeing that the government money is hitting, you know, the voters. It's hitting the cities and the sub-cities, and it's the rural people that get left behind. So that's really where we focused.
So let me just tag upon what you just said real quick. I want to talk about, I think the next big war would probably be between Ethiopia and Egypt because of the dam situation that's going up. We don't hear much about it, but this is a serious, serious situation. And this is all water. So we have water wars happening, right? And then we have, of course, what's going on with Tibet, all this water coming out of Tibet that's not flowing down to Cambodia, Vietnam, and Thailand, or India holding off the water going to Pakistan. So we see all these water areas where water is used as a tool for negotiations.
Yeah. Ken, one of the most interesting experiences I've ever had was sitting in a very small conference listening to the Jordanian water minister. And this was many years ago. And he actually, in his talk, tried to debunk the idea that the future wars of the world would be fought over water. He's like, this is in the headlines. It makes great clickbait. And he used Jordan and Israel as an example. And then he actually broke down, and this is a long time ago, and I wasn't taking physical notes, but he said, there's conflict over water, but it's almost always resolved. And what you just said, Ethiopia and Sudan have been fighting for years, but they never went to war. They threatened war, but they always managed to. So his hypothesis, and he could completely be wrong. He's like, Israel and Jordan have been fighting for years. We have been like threatening to obliterate each other over water, but it was always shared. It was always managed. It was a contrarian opinion. And he had story after story, like going back thousands of years of this conflict and this tension. I don't know that will hold true to the future, but I think for sure as a negotiating, I don't know. He was like, it's very hard to find a war actually fought.
I get that. That dam's a big deal.
The dam is a big deal, but it was all about Ethiopia and Sudan going to war. For the last half decade, again, I've been there 30 times. That was the tension. It was Bashir and Meles, the Ethiopian president before he passed away, and they were at odds, and they were always going to go to war, and it never did. Like over at least more than 5 years. Now it's Ethiopia and Egypt. So this guy would say they will work it out. They will actually work it out.
Let me go to Richard. Go for it.
Hey, Scott, thank you so much. I really enjoyed hearing you speak to metal before. I got your book. I loved it. It was
thanks, man.
It was fun. I loved the whole concept of what you did with the trying to create a funding where 100% of, I might be saying this wrong, but administrative overhead is covered through your board and other organizations' resources. So that way the average donor, 100% of their contribution goes to programs. And you got in trouble early on and had a lawsuit over some clarification on some of that, and you got better because of it.
Yeah. I mean, actually, those are two separate issues. Let me speak to the first. So the 100% model is pretty unique. There's a few other organizations, but they're all started by billionaires. So the most famous would be the Robin Hood Foundation in New York City. Paul Tudor Jones is a hedge fund billionaire. He said, I'm starting a charity. I'm rich enough to pay for all the overhead so that 100% of whatever you give, Ken, Jabu, Richard, you give to Robin Hood, all that's going to go to help the poor in New York City. I'll cover all the staff and the offices and all that. It eventually then was Paul Tudor Jones and his board as it grew. We love that idea and bootstrapped it. And it is actually as simple as two separate bank accounts. So KPMG comes in every year and they audit two completely separate bank accounts at Charity Water. One bank account where we pay 90 staff, about an $18 million a year overhead, offices, flights, audits, insurance, the Epson copy machine lease, the toner for the copy machine, right? That's bank account number one. 133 families pay for all that nasty, unsexy overhead. It's been people like Jack Dorsey and Daniel Ek at Spotify and Sean Parker and Reid Hoffman. And it's as random as Depeche Mode and Kristen Bell and Tony Hawk and Tyler Perry. Like, it's a group of 133 visionary philanthropists that say, we'll pay for all that disgusting, nasty overhead. 1 million plus donors from 120 countries then give to bank account number two. So Ken has given up a couple birthdays, gone to bat for us, said, I'm turning however old he is. I'm blessed. I don't need any gifts for my birthday. I don't need a new amazing shirt. I don't need a wallet. I don't need a tie. People don't have clean water. Give to my campaign and 100% of the money will go. In fact, we even pay back those credit card fees. So if you gave $100 to Ken's campaign on your Amex and we got 97, those 133 families put the $3 back in your donation, sent the 100 to the field, and then tracked it where Ken could see the actual wells from his birthday. That is incredibly difficult because we have a disconnected business model. And we could effectively go bankrupt with $100 million in the bank for water projects that we can't touch, right? So if Ken and all his buddies went out and raised all this money for water projects, but I was unable to raise the money from the 130 families, or if they disappeared, then we have no organization. So that has been, this delicate balance of the tension of, keeping the overhead funded, while then turning that into an efficient multiple for those overhead donors. Because if I took in 10 million for overhead and I only turn it into 10 million, well, they're like, I'm not giving you 10 million to turn it into 10 million. I want to give you 10 million to turn into 40. The lawsuit was a completely different experience, and it was over fluoride. We ignorantly early on, and this is 13 years ago, took a donor's money and promised to build a bunch of wells in the Rift Valley at hospitals in Kenya. We had no knowledge about the hydrogeology of the Rift Valley at that time. Our local partner said, hey, give us, I think it was like $35,000 a time, and we can drill a really deep 1,000-foot well, and we can give these hospitals clean water. So we said, great, we'll do a campaign. We raised the money. We gave 100% of the money. Turned out half of those wells, when they stuck that straw almost 1,000 feet down, had massive amounts of fluoride. And fluoride is great in toothpaste, but too much can rot your teeth and break bones and bend bones. So those wells had to be decommissioned. So the donor was like, wait, I only got half of what I paid for. And we said, we're sorry. And we spent all your money. We tried. The wells were all drilled, but you're right. Half are not serving people. We don't really have any money to give you back. Like, there's no refund in this process. And, the donor was very upset and sued us. We eventually resolved it very favorably for Charity Water in that case. But what we learned was we are responsible for knowing the hydrogeology and then presenting risk to the donor. So what we really should have said is, hey, donor, you want to be in the Rift Valley? We got like a 50% batting average here. Okay. So, and the donor might have been totally fine with that proposition. The wells actually weren't wasted. They went to be used at the clinic for cleaning, for washing, just not drinking because of the fluoride. So that really helped us kind of say, we are only as good as our local partners, right? Our suppliers, we are responsible for all of their actions. And again, we had 5 employees at the time, so we were a really young organization, but we learned a lot from it.
Question for you. So I am traveling to all these unique places all over the world, and I did get do you know what a Berkey filter is?
No, but it sounds cool, and it looks like, I don't know, like something you'd get in a club.
And it comes with a pretty intense filter system that's built into this. I could pee into this thing, and on the other side comes out completely clean drinking water, right? It is interesting that so many countries I'm going to do have fluoride in the water, and they deliberately put it in there, like Israel.
Yeah, a little fluoride is fine. Too much fluoride is really bad. Google this at some time. Like, over fluoridated water, it would rot your teeth. It's so interesting. Like, the right amount is great for your teeth, and 5 or 10 times that amount, and you'd have no teeth.
But why even put it in there if we brush our teeth? Especially a place like Israel. They do brush their teeth. They do, they have...
Again, it's like, small doses can be, I mean, I think of we could probably apply this to 100 things in life. Something in a small quantity can be fine for you, if not even good for you. You 20 or 50x that quantity and you're dead. Yeah, I took 2 Advil last night because I had a headache. If I took 20 Advil, like, I'm probably not doing the Zoom tonight.
No, you'd be bleeding. You're literally.
If I took 200 Advil, like, I'm in a hospital.
Let's step back, guys, real quick before you ask more questions. Scott, can you just tell us about that gigantic pivot, going from the club scene and then going on that medical ship? By the way, I remember your speech so vividly.
We were in like Century City, right?
No, we were at a little restaurant that was called the Butcher's something, and we had a screen, just a regular projection screen. Ken Hertz brought you in.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, Kenny.
And I just tell you, in that room was Sandy Kleiman, who creates CA. I mean, it was an amazing group of guys because we didn't have anywhere to hang out in LA back then. And they've all gone off and done amazing things. But your talk was one of those where we were just riveted. because you were going through that change. You were going through that metamorphosis of turning
Yeah.
into who you are today. So what are those pivotal moments? Club scene, getting on the medical ship, to creating this monster of a company.
Yeah. I mean, look, I did this a little bit when we were together last time, but you know, the chapters, the first chapter would be a very conservative Christian upbringing, very Christian parents, growing up in the church, no smoking, no drinking, no sex, no cursing, none of that. The classic, wake up at 18, now it's my turn. Lots of sex, lots of drugs, lots of drinking, lots of gambling, right? Like, let me do the opposite. Let me kick against the goads. Let me act out the prodigal son scenario. For me, that was becoming a New York City nightclub promoter for 10 years and working 40 clubs and chasing models around, to Milan and Paris and London and Fashion Week and flying private and Punta del Este and Buzios, Brazil, and then all that nonsense. 10 years of that. The watch, the girls, the BMW, the, $7,000 dinners, at whatever the hottest club was that somebody else was paying for on their platinum, on their black Amex. And I don't know, I woke up one day and I'm like, well, this sucks. Like, I'm the worst person I know. I'm emotionally bankrupt. I'm not in love with this girl that is on the cover of magazines who lives with me. I go to dinner at 10. I go to the club at 12. I go to sleep at noon, popping Ambien to come down. Then I wake up at 8 p.m. and do it all over again. Like, this is disgusting, like, unhealthy. Oh, by the way, like, my conversations are shouting over DJs playing the same freaking songs, and I'm yelling at a Polish model, like, hi, how are you? How do you like the music? I mean, it's, I don't know, the shine like wears off or wore off. And
after a decade, of course it would have.
yeah, and in a way it's like the frog in the kettle, you don't really know it until you have this epiphany or this cathartic moment. It's like, wow, my life sucks. And I had a health issue. Half my body inexplicably went numb. I wrote about this in the book. And I went to a bunch of doctors and, nobody could find anything wrong with me. But my lifestyle had been so unhealthy. And I think I was faced with mortality. Like, what if I died at 28? What does my life mean? Like, my tombstone's going to read, here lies a dude who got 1 million people wasted at 40 clubs. And that legacy or that tombstone inscription was so radically opposite from the way that I was raised as a faithful, spiritual, moral child, taking care of my mom, who's an invalid, taking care of others. So it was like a prodigal son story, Ken. I'm like, I want to come home. I miss home. I miss the spirituality. I miss the morality. I miss helping others. I miss feeling good about myself. And coming home for me was this moment of selling everything I own, quitting smoking, quitting drinking, breaking up with a girlfriend, excuse me. This is what 11 Zooms does. You finally lose your voice at 11 o'clock at night. Just waking up and wanting to find the opposite. I think I'm a pretty radical all-in guy. And I realized that a pivot was not what was needed. A small course correction, was not. It was an opposite that was needed. Find the 180-degree opposite of my life and walk in that direction. Actually run in that direction. So I sold everything, quit all the vices, and I tried to serve on a humanitarian mission which took me to post-war Liberia, West Africa, right after Taylor had been thrown out on a medical mission. And that changed my life. I was surrounded and immersed by humanitarian doctors and surgeons who had given up their vacation time, who had not gone to the Maldives or St. Thomas, or St. John, and had flown to Liberia to use their skills in the service of others in a country with no electricity, no running water, no sewage, no mail. And I just wanted to be them. It was inspiring. Like, it was one thing being around a DJ coked up or on ecstasy. It was another being around a surgeon who had left his successful practice in Santa Barbara to operate for free on cleft lips and cleft palate patients for a month or 2 months, getting nothing in return. And, the year turned into 2 years. And then in that second year, I learned that the dirty water was making people sick. I mean, 50% of the disease, excuse me, I'm sorry, guys. 50% of the disease in the country was waterborne. So I said, well, if I really care about health, if I want to make a big impact with the rest of my life, why not go after the water crisis?
What are you drinking, by the way? What do you got?
I'm drinking like Poland Spring, but it's not working.
Is it clean water?
It's like white peach ginger. It's very, it's I don't know. It's sparkling water.
Because it's cold out there.
I need like apparently a bucket of cough drops or something.
Oh, do you have allergies?
No.
No.
Just allergies to talking all day, maybe.
So Scott, are you happy where Charity Water is today?
No, I'm not. I'm glad you asked that question. So I wrote a book that became a New York Times bestseller. We built an organization that raised, $500 million, and we were the first charity to get 1 million Twitter followers. We were the first charity to use Instagram. We've been on the cover of magazines and all that. And what I normally get asked is, did you think you'd be so successful? I'm like, this is a fraction of what I believe.
Right.
That was possible.
Because you told me $1 billion we're going to raise. $1 billion.
Ken, my vision, my dream, what is needed to meet this global crisis, what is needed to serve the 785 million people is so much greater than what we've done. Now, we've helped 11 million humans get clean water, okay? So it's 550 Staples centers.
Mm-hmm.
It's 550 Madison Square Gardens. So when I get depressed, right, Charity Water sold out the garden for a year and a half. Okay. We did, sold out shows of people with clean water for 550 nights. I don't think Billy Joel's even done that. But you put the 11 million that we've helped against 785 million, it's 1/70th, it's 1.5%. So who gets excited about solving 1.5% of a problem in 14 years? So I really believe the best is yet to come. And I saw a great tweet by Justin Kahn of Twitch the other day, and he showed the Amazon stock chart over 25 years. And it looks like this for 20 years. And then in the last 5, it looks like this. And he said, had Jeff Bezos left Amazon in year 20, he would have left 80% of the value realized.
Yeah.
The stock was at 2,000 now, and now it's over 3,000. He would have left over 90% of the value was in the last 6 years.
You're beginning
the first 20 was really that head down setup, right? So I would hope that Charity Water would look like that. We're in year 14. We've raised $500 million. That's a lot in charitable standards. It's nothing to meet the scale of the problem. So I would hope that in year 25, if I'm still kicking 11 years from now, right, that's 5 billion or 50 billion. And, maybe we're running desalinization plants, that are piping in. I don't know what that looks like, but
so
I think there's something
my high net worth friends that have $1 billion businesses, they know when they can't grow it more.
I can grow it more. The market cap is,
No, not the market cap, but as a leader. Next door to me is Gwen Shotwell. Gwen runs SpaceX. And Elon knew he needed to bring her in to take it to that next level. He knew how to raise the money from the government side of things, but he needed somebody in there to really accelerate it. And it wasn't an ego thing. He just knew that wasn't his space. Do you ever look at yourself going, maybe it's not me? Maybe it's else?
Yeah. I had that moment at year 10 for sure. I tried to quit. We had our first down year, and I didn't. And then I came and I doubled the business in 2 years from 45 million to 90 million. Because we needed something new. You know, there was that next idea. And really the big idea for us was a move to subscription. So Charity Water's future growth is the Spotify, Netflix, Hulu model.
Absolutely.
And we now have subscribers from 113 countries. We are growing a clean water subscriber community called The Spring that is, it's lights out. We went from 0 to $20 million in recurring revenue in a couple of years. And, you know, I was on the phone with Daniel Ek last week, who's a big supporter of ours from Spotify. And Daniel, you know, he's great because he challenges me to think even bigger. So when Spotify had 900,000 paying subscribers, he stood in front of the company and said, we're going to 100 million paid. What's that, 110x goal? And he said, we're going to do it in less than 10 years. They have 155 million paid now, right? So when you think about how big the world of people that could care about clean and safe drinking water for humans in need, people that could sign up to provide the most basic human need for human flourishing for 10 a month or 30 a month or $50 a month, knowing that 100% of their money doesn't get stepped on. It doesn't go to a single salary. 100% of that goes straight to the field. There's at least 100 million people. There may be 100 million people in this country that could give something every month for that. And we've got 70,000 of them.
You talked about how COVID's been good for you on a personal level. You made the move.
Yeah.
Like different seasons, you get to see leaves fall. That's great. How has COVID helped you out when it comes to the professional side?
I mean, it's actually been tough for Charity Water. We lost $10 million in corporate donations right off the bat. We're down 30 million. So our budget this year was $107 million that we would raise. We'll be in the 70s.
Wow.
That's a big hit. Now, it's still 70 some million dollars. You know, that's kind of top 250 out of 1.6 million nonprofits in America. So, you know, that'd be kind of Fortune 250 of, you know, of the sector. But, you know, it's a huge hit, and it's 300,000 people that will not get clean water unless we can fill that gap. That said, I'm most excited because we quietly continue to invest in the subscription business. So when we lose that 10 million in corporates, when the big corporates go away and cut their giving immediately, right, with shutdowns and COVID, right, more people are signing up at 10 a month and 30 a month and 50 a month. So I'm kind of slowly trying to replace that revenue, the chunky, unreliable revenue, with everyday people who can show up. So it's been, it's bad in the short term, but I think strategically it's caused us, we know what business we want to be in. We want to be in the Spotify for clean water business. We want to be in the Netflix for clean water business. We want to build a community so generous the world has never seen anything like it before, where we are not inviting people into the spring on a set it and forget it. We are, I mean, I'm doing Zoom events with our first Zoom event. I invited just monthly givers who had just joined in the last couple of months, and 560 people RSVP'd. And I got to do this thanking people who are giving $5 a month, treating them like millionaires.
Scott, I got an idea, and I'd like to talk to you offline, but there's terrestrial broadcast opportunities. I'm just going to let you know that I think the millions that you need to touch upon are sitting out there, and you're not talking to them because they're not on the traditional media as being social media.
Yeah, I'd love that. I mean, any donated media or affordable media we could get that's traditional.
Let's talk about that. And it's actually you owning the media. And I want you to think more Joel Osteen level and becoming more around prosperity of helping people be more prosperous with their money and giving. And let's talk about that offline.
Okay.
And it's low-hanging fruit. It kind of blows my mind because the problem is we all live online and we forgot that there's legacy stuff out there that we're not talking to, and they want us.
Yeah.
Guys, Scott is with us for a few more minutes. I want to make sure your questions get in there. Scott, I also want you to do us a favor. I'd like you to hook us up with Casey Neistat. Okay, and the reason why, let me just tell you why. He's not taking advantage of LA properly.
Okay.
He thinks he gets it, but he's still a stranger. He's enjoying it like a tourist. He's not really meeting the right people to make him love it. And I think he's going to have issues being here because he's still thinking like a New Yorker.
Ken, send me the perfect
Does that make
email and I'll
sense?
send it to him. Send me the perfect email and I'll send it to him with love.
Yeah, I'll tell another story.
Hey, put your
Okay,
thoughts
let's go.
together.
Let's go.
He likes that kind of feedback.
Oh God, I've been watching that guy, and he's living in the. I mean, I know even where he lives. Let me go to Jared. Jared, I'm going to bring you on right now. Jared. You got the next question, buddy? Go for it.
Hey, it wasn't a question. It was just more of like a praise. In 2012, I tried doing a fundraiser. I was the only one who raised any money. It was very disappointing. In 2016, I booked a recurring on a show, and I was able to, one of my first things I did was call back the organization. I was really excited. I was like, hey, can I do my fundraiser again? And they said, no, you can't. I was like, what? I went like 15 calls back and forth. I begged them to do it. They finally said, okay, we'll let you do it if you can finish it. So I was able to finish the well. And then I got the pictures back, and I cried when I saw the kids, like the people of the well. And I haven't told anybody because I don't usually like telling people about giving, but I have told people privately in conversations because I think it's one of the most fulfilling things that you can do is to do something that impacts the lives of people that can never pay you back. So I think what you guys are doing is amazing.
I think, Jared, you said something that was really important. You don't like to talk about giving because you kind of look like a douchebag. Yeah. Right?
Yeah. I don't post about giving.
But Scott did something very, very smart with the birthday idea because it's not that you're giving, you're sharing, saying, hey, this is my birthday. I am 38, I'm 55, or whatever it is. Let's all do something together. And you're a catalyst to something. And it's you're giving, but you're giving part of your celebration to celebrate someone else's life. It's a very smart concept. I don't know how birthdays are doing. Are they still doing well, Scott?
Yeah, I mean, Ken, this is a longer conversation. First of all, Jared, thank you so much for doing that. And it is a real impact as a guy that's traveled around. I mean, you impacting the lives of 250 people with clean water because you booked a recurring show. It is real. It's awesome. If you were there, you would be crying for a long time as they would thank you, and they would hold up their children and say, you know, my children have clean water because of you. They would talk about before the water came and after the water. In so many of these communities, it is like this line of demarcation. And, you know, it's 10 grand. Like it's a watch for some people. You know, for some people, it's a night out in Vegas at Tao, you know, and it's clean water for hundreds of people, you know, that could last a decade or more. So yeah, thanks for doing that and following up. And I'm glad you're persistent. Our organization responds really well to people who are, if you like break down the door, they'll make exceptions like crazy. So
I want to go to Noor. Noor, can you turn your camera on, Noor? I'd like you to give some advice to Noor. Noor has launched a school in Kabul, Afghanistan.
Okay.
And it's a challenge. It's a challenge at times. And I was wondering, what kind of advice can you give somebody that's doing something on the other side of the world? He's sitting in Los Angeles, his school's in Afghanistan. What kind of advice can you give somebody that's doing something so far remote?
Well, what are the challenges? Is it fundraising? Is it programs?
First of all, I want to thank you, Scott. Super inspired by you, man. You're incredible. What you do is just incredible. I understand the value of clean water, and I myself been kind of studying water the last few months, and myself inspired by water so much because besides the fact of it being clean, it has so many other miracles and 75 different elements and so many different uses. It's just mind-blowing.
Yeah.
But yeah, we do have a school in Afghanistan. The school is currently closed, but we're going to open it back up coming next semester. We did repainted the whole school. We have new staff, new people in there, but it's a privately owned school, family funded. And yeah, I'm just inspired by you. Hopefully I can collaborate with you somehow, some way. But yeah, man, I want to thank you.
Well, maybe you need to build more, Noor. I mean, you know, it starts with one. We started with one well. We got 60,000 now.
Yeah. Yeah,
I mean,
man.
there's a lot of kids in Afghanistan. There's a lot of kids there that need education. So
I'm not sure if you know, Scott. I've predicted
Together a program to teach for water
know
in
about
our.
prizes. I think Cameron Sinclair and you're next.
Oh, sorry.
Wait, I think let's try that again. Nor, go ahead. Nor, try again.
I said I'd love to put together a program, maybe to educate the kids there for clean water. Maybe a system that they can build for agricultural places or places that are like in the rurals to gravity feed clean water. I've kind of studied a little bit on how to collect rainwater and to clean it using products and things that you can find locally, like sand and things like that.
yeah, amazing. Ken can connect us, and I can connect you to our program people.
Let's do another question real quick. Let's go to Mr. Butler. Mr. Butler.
Yes. All right. There you go. So I'm curious. I'm listening to you talk about wells and you know, with water being so critical. I'm wondering, do you guys partner with other organizations that maybe do another piece of the puzzle? Like, for example, you know, like wetland restoration can lead to more clean water, right? And while you guys, you know, your thing is obviously not to go and plant trees or wetland, you know, grasses and forbs, that seems like it would be maybe of value to get towards that goal that you have, because it is like, it's pretty inspiring. But and then also, say in urban settings where people don't have water that's clean, you know, there are you know, retention basins and different sort of ways that we can do to retain stormwater and filter it through a process that's you know, mimicking nature in some ways. So I don't know if you deal with any of those kind of things, but I'm curious if you do, and if you don't, have you thought about it?
Tell Scott what you do, Nicholas. Tell him what you do.
So I'm a forester by career and education. So I've spent a lot of my life just doing forest restoration and forest ecology. And so I deal with all of the, I mean, essentially I manage water even in LA, because with wildfires, the biggest issue is that once you lose all of the vegetation, you know, when it rains, now you just have mudslides. You no longer have sort of that same infiltration that you had. You know what I mean? So
yeah, let me tackle the question. That, first of all, that's awesome. And I will say, I just put our 240 acres into a forest reserve.
good deal.
Last week I went down to the county. So partnerships. So the way Charity Water works is in partnership. We partner with 44 different local partners. So I didn't kind of hit that earlier, but there are no guys like me working in the field. Nobody looks like me. There's 350 people in Ethiopia. All 350 of them are Ethiopians. No expats, no dudes from New York or LA or, you know, Texas. We really believe in building the capacity of our local partners. There's a huge level of trust. We are an organization that has actually succeeded by believing the locals are the best equipped, both culturally and have the skills, that know the context, that know where the well should be, the right technologies, and that, you know, our role is in service to those organizations, to raise awareness, to raise the money, and then basically hand it over. Now, there's checks and balances, there's auditing, there's, you know, program quality management, but really it's like, what do you guys need? We had a partner once in Ethiopia that said, we need 45 trucks. We bought them 45 trucks. You know, they cost $50,000 each, and they scaled their organization up, and they hired more hydrogeologists, and they got, you know, they went from 1 drilling rig eventually to 9 drilling rigs. So the partnership model is something that is the entire model. We are not flying over there, with hard hats trying to like figure out, in Orissa, India, where people need water. We found the guy in Orissa, India, who'd been doing it for 30 years. And we said, how do we 5X you? What's your vision? What would you do with funding? How can we come in service of you? There is some let me just say this. Some partners are better than others at the conservation stuff. Ethiopia specifically is very good at terracing. So if you were to come with me, Nicholas, you would look at mountain after mountain after mountain, and you would see billions of hours of human labor building rock walls all the way up. 500 layers of rock walls, right? And this was actually part of USAID's Food for Work program. They realized the massive deforestation. They realized that, when the rains came, it just slid straight down, flooding, etc. And, looking at the satellite images of this area, Tigray, where we've invested almost $100 million, and over a decade, it's green. Like, it has gone from burnt to green because of that. Literally billions of hours. I mean, there's, people just going out there building rock walls. So in that area, when a partner builds a hand dug well, they're digging trenches on all four sides, trying to replenish the aquifer. Others are a little less savvy when it comes to that stuff. So we haven't specifically partnered outside of, clean and safe drinking water, but that watershed management is certainly a part of the conversation. And just to be honest, some are better at it than others. When it comes to hygiene and sanitation, I mean, we're only talking about water here, but 50% of the disease is caused by a lack of hand washing. 40% is sanitation, 35% is dirty water. You compound all three of those things, right? And like, which order? People would say, well, I don't want to wash my hands if there's no clean water. And water gives you the right to talk about sanitation and to talk about hygiene because you've got the clean water. Some of our partners are really good at, let's say, open defecation free zones and getting everybody signed up for toilets. Others are really, really good at clean water, and they kind of suck at sanitation. And we'll go and we'll look at their toilets, and somebody's storing rice in a toilet. So, and that's not, and then that's a conversation, and we try to information share and say, well, can you go talk to this partner over here who's really good at this? Others are really good at the software, the soft stuff, the community training, the hygiene, the sanitation, Gotcha. And they'll drill a crooked well. And they have kind of implementation problems. So, all that was a long-winded answer to say watershed management is something we talk about with partners. Some are really good at it, some are not, and need to get better. But the whole model is really in partnership.
Scott, good news, you're done. You're done.
Okay, well, 11, you're like on time, huh?
I'm a radio guy. That's what I do. So, hey, Scott, how can we help you besides contributing? To Charity Water? What else can we do?
Y'all could join the Spring, thespring.com. That helps, and you'll feel connected to the community. I think you will think it's probably the best monthly giving program you've joined, hopefully, because we're talking to you and we're trying to win the business every month. We're not taking you for granted. We're trying to tell you what the money is doing, whether you give $10 a month or, $10,000 a month. We have a couple of people, with their small businesses just throwing it on their Amex, doing a well a year. And then, I don't know, introductions. Ken, you've been helpful. Kenny Hertz introduced me to you, and you did a bunch of birthdays, and who are the people we should be talking to who could either be, part of those 133 families.
Chris Martin.
What?
Chris Martin.
Actually, Coldplay raised $250,000 for Charity Water. I've never met him, but Coldplay took us out on tour and did a VIP meet and greet. Ed Norton called me one day. He's like, hey, can Coldplay raise money for you? Would that be okay? And I'm like, no, Ed. No, they absolutely can't.
I'm in Dubai for an entire month with Sheikh Mohammed, and I'm doing an event for 100,000 people. Let's talk about what I'm doing out there. Let's see where I can help out.
Yeah, and And speaking as well, you know, I've been speaking to a lot of companies just over Zoom. I spoke at Casper and SurveyMonkey and Logitech recently. So if there's opportunities just to share the story in front of a lot of people, that's great too.
All right. Scott,
I promise not to cough so much.
everybody unmute yourself. Thanks, Scott, for being part
Thanks,
of this.
Scott.
Scott,
Scott.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Scott.
Scott.
Appreciate it.
Thanks,
Rock,
Scott.
man. Thank you.
Everybody.
Thanks, Scott. Really appreciate it.